The forest was unnaturally still. No wind stirred the dense canopy overhead, and even the usual background hum of insects seemed to hold its breath. Mist coiled around the moss-covered trunks like smoke from a dying fire, curling low to the ground and muting the colors of the undergrowth. A faint rustling sound snapped the silence, a branch shifting, the scrape of paw on dirt. Then, from the veil of fog, it emerged. It wasn't just a beast. It was a presence, an embodiment of power and savagery, its eyes glowing faintly with an intelligence that defied explanation. Towering nearly 6 feet at the shoulder, the creature's dark fur was matted with blood and mud, its massive flank rising and falling with labored breath. Deep gashes marred its side, the edges blackened with infection. A chunk of metal, a remnant of a trap, still protruded from its leg. And yet it did not snarl. It did not lunge. It limped forward slowly, stopping only feet from the crouching man before it. The man, mid-30s, beard flecked with gray, his coat heavy with wear, held out his hand, palm up. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. Just waited. His breath came slow and steady, as if he knew anything faster might break the moment. In the other hand, he held a piece of dried meat, shaking slightly in the chill air. A slow stretch of silence passed between them before the creature took a hesitant step forward, then another, lowering its head. Behind the trees, 5 figures in tactical armor stood frozen. One of them, a woman with short silver blonde hair and a rifle clutched in white-nickeled hands, whispered, "Is he feeding it?" No one answered. No one could. The forest seemed to exhale as the beast accepted the offering. Its jaws closed gently around the meat, and for the first time its posture eased. The man whispered something no one could hear. The beast gave a quiet huff, as if in acknowledgement. It lifted a paw, large enough to crush a human skull, and placed it lightly in the man's outstretched hand. One of the soldiers stumbled backward, his armor clanking dully. Should we shoot?" "No," the woman said. "No, not yet." No one moved. No one could fathom what they were witnessing. They had come here following an unusual signal, biological, powerful, erratic. It had led them deep into this old-growth expanse, where technology failed and instincts ruled. They expected danger, a confrontation. What they found was something far stranger. The man with the beast was Callan Varric, once a soldier, now labeled a deserter, presumed dead years ago after a failed expedition into the wild zones. His face was different, rougher, marked by scars and sun. But it was him. The file photos didn't lie. The creature, no, the apex predator, was of a kind most believed extinct. They were called Varket by the native tongues, Shadow Kings by soldiers, and Nightmares by everyone else. Powerful enough to tear armored drones apart, cunning enough to evade every capture attempt for decades. Their extinction had been deliberate, efficient, total, or so they thought. Yet here one stood, wounded, submitting, not to a cage, not to sedation, but to a man. "Is it tame?" one soldier murmured. "No," the woman, Lieutenant Saren Halvik, answered. "Taming means control. That thing isn't controlled. It's choosing." And that made it more dangerous. Callan didn't speak to the soldiers. He hadn't acknowledged their presence, though he knew they were there. He could hear their weapons humming with power, the faint crunch of boots in soft soil. But his focus was on core. Yes, he'd named it. The act was human, sentimental and absurd, but it felt necessary. The first night he'd found the beast dying in the pit, its leg mangled in a hunter's trap, its breath coming in ragged gulps. It had tried to kill him. Even broken, it had lunged, determined to die a predator. He hadn't run. He'd spoken, low and steady, hands out, heart pounding so loudly he was sure the beast could hear it. He'd fed it water through a cracked canteen, stitched what wounds he could, and stayed nearby for 3 nights in the freezing rain. It was stupid. It was suicidal. And it had changed everything. Trust had come in layers. Small signs. An eye that stopped glaring. Ears no longer pinned back. Breath slowing. The way it leaned into his hand when the fever broke. Not once had Callan used force. Not once had he commanded it. He'd simply stayed. Now, months later, they were inseparable. But this moment, this was the first time others had seen them together. And the sight was something none of them would ever forget. Saren lowered her weapon slowly, her mind racing. She had seen monsters before. Creatures that killed without thought, driven by hunger or rage or programming. This was not that. This was something else. Something unsettling. That predator looked at the man as if it knew him, as if it trusted him. The others didn't understand what they were witnessing, but Saren saw the deeper truth forming behind the tableau. This man hadn't survived the predator. He befriended it, or worse, been accepted by it. Her calm crackled. Lieutenant Halvik, report. Is the target neutralized? She didn't answer immediately. She watched as the beast nuzzled Callan's shoulder gently, before collapsing beside him with a groan. The man ran his hand along its head, murmuring something soft, the way one might comfort a child or a wounded friend. The voice repeated, "Lieutenant, do you have eyes on the asset?" She clicked the mic once, acknowledgement, but said nothing. She wasn't ready to explain what she was seeing. Kor blinked slowly, his golden eyes settling on the hidden soldiers. He knew they were there. He always knew, but he didn't move. Not yet. Callan finally turned his head slightly, just enough for his voice to carry. If you're going to shoot, do it clean. He suffered enough. The words weren't a threat. They weren't a challenge. They were a plea. Saren stepped forward through the mist, lowering her rifle entirely. The others hissed warnings, but she didn't stop. "I should arrest you," she said. "Bring you in for desertion, for consorting with a Class A biohazard." Callan didn't respond. "You're lucky I don't have orders to kill." He looked up at her then, eyes shadowed, face worn. "You don't have orders because no one thought this was possible." Saren stared at him, then at the beast. Its chest rose and fell in slow, rhythmic heaves. It was sleeping, even vulnerable. "What is it?" she asked. "Why is it letting you near?" Callan's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, sad and tired. He was dying. I didn't save him to make a point. I just couldn't let him die alone. Saren's breath caught. There was no triumph in his voice. No pride. Only a quiet resolve. She looked again at the scene, man and monster lying side by side in the fog, and something inside her shifted. There would be questions, orders, investigations. But none of that mattered yet. In that moment, she made a choice. She turned to her team. "Stand down. No one fires. Not unless I say." Murmurs rose, but no one defied her. The mist thickened, shrouding the strange pair once again. The forest held its breath, and the world changed quietly without fanfare, because one man chose compassion when he had every reason not to, and because a beast, feared and forsaken, chose to trust him. They didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a story about survival. It was a beginning of something bigger. The fire crackled low in the clearing, sending tiny sparks swirling into the black sky. Stars pressed to the canopy in scattered clusters, offering faint, cold light to a world too old to care. Callan sat cross-legged beside Kor, his hand resting gently on the beast's massive shoulder. The creature lay curled, a slow, deliberate breath moving through its barrel chest. Every movement was measured now, each gesture between them rooted in quiet familiarity. Lieutenant Saren Halvik sat across the fire, eyes flickering between man and monster. The others had retreated into the woods, setting up a perimeter, speaking in low, uneasy voices. No one dared question her decision to stand down, but the tension still hung like a wire ready to snap. Every soldier there had trained to kill things like core. Seeing one so still, so at peace, upended every certainty they carried. "I still don't understand it," Saren said finally, voice low. "This thing should have torn you apart the moment you got close. You were unarmed." "I wasn't unarmed," Callan said. "I had something better." He tapped his chest, and she frowned. "Empathy?" she asked, not without sarcasm. Callan gave a half-smile. "Wounds recognize each other. That's all it ever was." She studied him in the firelight. The shadows accentuated the sharp lines of his face, the cheekbones, the scar that ran from his temple to jaw. His eyes looked older than his age, deepened by too many cold nights and too few warm memories. "I read your file," Saren said. "Special Recon, 4th Division. Served in the Deadwater campaigns. Then you vanished." He didn't answer right away. The fire popped loudly, as if covering the silence. Finally, he said, "After Deadwater, I saw things that didn't sit right. The way we cleared wild zones, burned nests, sterilized species." "You went AWOL," she said bluntly. "I walked away." Same thing in the eyes of command. Callan nodded, not to concede, but to acknowledge that nothing would change their perspective. "They wanted extinction," he said. "I wanted understanding." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "You do realize that thing beside you is responsible for the deaths of over 200 settlers across 3 provinces?" "I don't doubt it," Callan said. "But those weren't murders. They were defenses." Core stirred slightly at the shift in tone. His ear twitched, but he didn't open his eyes. "These creatures weren't hunting for sport," Callan continued. "They were being pushed, chased, their land invaded, their kin slaughtered. We didn't study them, we exterminated them." Saren's jaw tightened. She hated how part of her agreed. Still, she asked, "And what makes you think this one is different?" Callan looked down at Core, his voice gentle. "He made a choice. So, did I?" A long pause followed, the kind filled not with words but with meaning. It hung between them like a fragile thread. "I'm not here to be a hero," Callan said quietly. "I stayed with him because he was in pain. Because I was, too." "What pain?" she asked, the words out before she could temper them. He met her gaze without hesitation. "The kind that leaves you empty even when you're alive. The kind that makes you walk away from everything because nothing feels right anymore." Saren looked away then. The firelight made her eyes glassy, or maybe it was something else. "I lost a brother in the reclamation push," she said after a moment. 12 years old. Got caught between evac shuttles. We weren't even supposed to be there. Wrong coordinates. Wrong time." Callan didn't interrupt. He let her speak. "They told me it was the Varketh. Said he was collateral damage. That they had to purge the area. But I always wondered," she trailed off, "if it was the soldiers?" Callan offered. She nodded. "But wondering doesn't bring him back." "No," Callan said, "but it can keep others from vanishing the same way." A strange silence followed, this one heavier with understanding, the kind that only formed when 2 people exposed just enough of their pain to recognize it in someone else. "What now?" she asked finally. "You tell your command whatever you need to," Callan said. "But I'm not going back." Neither is he. Saren looked over her shoulder, toward the dark beyond the firelight, where her team waited. "They'll come for you." "They already have," he said. "And they'll fail again." "You think you can outrun them forever?" "No, but I don't have to. I just have to show them something stronger than fear." He stood slowly, stretching his legs. Core opened one eye, glowing faintly gold in the shadows. When Callan moved, the creature rose too, fluid despite its size, towering over them both. I named him Core, Callan said. Saren blinked. You named a living weapon. I named a survivor. He stepped into the forest, and Core followed close behind. Saren stood as well, unsure what came next. You leaving now? She asked. For a while, he said, until the next storm rolls in. She hesitated. Then, if I wanted to find you again, how would I? Callan looked back once. Look for the place where silence grows loudest. That's where we'll be. He vanished into the trees, swallowed by mist and shadow, the enormous beast padding silently at his side. The fire crackled behind Saren, the only sound left to mark their passing. For a long while, she didn't move, just stared into the dark. The questions came flooding in moments later. Her squad surrounded her, voices tense, asking what orders to follow, what threat level to assign, whether to call for backup. She silenced them with a raised hand. We encountered the anomaly, she said. It was injured, not a threat. Lieutenant, the man, Callan Varric, he's an escaped asset. Are we not bringing him in? She paused. No, we're not. One soldier, younger than the rest, asked the question they were all thinking. Why? Saren turned toward the dark, where man and monster had disappeared. Because he's already found something more powerful than the system we serve, she said. And because he made a choice I wasn't brave enough to make. The others didn't understand. Not yet, but they would. Back in the trees, Callan pressed forward with Core beside him. The forest welcomed them like a forgotten song, its branches arching protectively overhead. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Pursuit was inevitable. Betrayal, too. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that Core walked with him. Not because he was commanded, but because he chose to. That was the power they could never replicate. Not with programming. Not with weapons. Only with trust. Only with time. As the forest swallowed them whole, the bond between predator and man shimmered. Fragile, defiant, and deeply, impossibly real. And far behind them, a soldier who once believed in black and white borders began to question everything she had ever been told. The rain came with a whisper at first, just a gentle patter on the broad leaves overhead. But within minutes, it was a steady curtain, soaking the earth, muting every sound but its own rhythm. Callan moved through the storm with measured steps, the hood of his coat low over his brow, Core trailing just behind him like a silent shadow. The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt tight with tension. Tracks had appeared at the edge of the valley. Boot prints, not belonging to any local hunters. The hunt had begun again. Callan crouched by a cluster of moss-draped stones, examining the impressions. Fresh, less than a day old. The direction suggested a flanking maneuver, someone with tactical knowledge. Not scouts. Trained men. His jaw clenched. Core growled low, ears flicking back. The beast's golden eyes scanned the canopy, muscles taut beneath his dark, scar-slicked fur. He had learned to trust these signs. How Core reacted before even Callan sensed danger. And this time, the warning was clear. They weren't alone. A crack of movement came from the trees to the east. Not loud, not clumsy, but intentional. Designed to be heard, just enough to test the reaction of their quarry. Callan didn't move, didn't breathe wrong. He waited. Then another noise, closer this time. A whistle, sharp, precise, cut through the rain. It was military code, not his division, but familiar enough. Core bared his fangs. Callan whispered, "No aggression unless I say, understand." Core grunted in acknowledgement. He shifted closer to Callan's side, lowering his body, preparing for whatever came next. Out of the trees emerged three figures, their movements coordinated, rifles raised but not yet aimed. Their armor bore no insignia, black, matte, and custom-fitted. One stepped forward, removing their helmet. It was a woman, sharp-featured, eyes cold as glass. "Callan Varek," she said, voice clipped. "You've been busy." He didn't flinch. "And you are Captain Linride. Shadow Division under Joint Species Compliance." "They've expanded," he muttered. She smirked. "You left a lot of messes. Someone had to clean them. I left because your kind kept labeling everything we didn't understand as an enemy." She raised an eyebrow. "That thing behind you is an enemy." Kor growled, low and deep. Raid's two companions tensed, guns twitching, but she didn't move. "Stand down," she said to them, eyes still locked on Callan. "Not yet." Callan stepped between them and Kor. "You don't get to define who's worth saving anymore." "You think you're saving it?" she asked. "You've just made a weapon unpredictable. Dangerous." "He was always dangerous," Callan said. "But he's no one's weapon." "That's where you're wrong," she replied. "Everything in this world serves a purpose, yours included." She stepped forward, carefully, slowly. "Come back with us. We'll let the scientists work with the creature. You'll get recognition, protection." Callan gave a small, bitter laugh. "That's not protection. That's a cage with better lighting. We're offering a compromise." "No, you're offering control." Silence stretched between them. Kor's breathing was slow but deliberate. His gaze locked on the soldiers. The rain began to lighten, but the tension remained heavy. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Ryder said. "Quieter now. There's something coming. Something worse than any apex predator. That's why we were tracking him in the first place. He's not just a relic. He's connected to it." Callan narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" She looked toward the forest edge, her voice low. "Satellite readings, biological surges, genetic anomalies in predator species. It started after you took this one off the grid. There's resonance, feedback, like he's part of a larger whole waking up." Callan's heart pounded. He looked back at Kor, who met his gaze. Something passed between them, an instinct ancient and raw. "You're lying," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. "I wish I were," Ryder said. "We're not here to kill him. We're here to contain him, before it finds him first." That word again. It. Callan took a step back. "What is it?" Ryder hesitated. "We don't know, only that it moves beneath the soil, older than our maps. Something your companion was bred to resist, or perhaps summon." The word stung, not because of their content, but because they didn't feel wrong. He had always known Kor was more than an animal. There were dreams, flashes of memories that weren't his, visions of structures deep in the forest, stone carvings older than any known species. Kor would sometimes sit and stare for hours toward the east, as if waiting for something to rise from the ground. "I can't let you take him," Callan said. "You don't have a choice." "I always do." The standoff teetered. Then a sound ripped through the earth. A deep, resonating thrum, like something massive shifting beneath miles of stone. The soldiers turned sharply. Birds scattered. The rain stopped. Raya muttered, "It's early." Kor let out a roar, not of aggression, but warning. He turned, eyes wide, then looked at Callan. "What is it?" Callan asked, crouching beside him. "What do you feel?" But no answer came. Only a low tremble through the soil, as if the planet had taken a breath and held it. Behind them, trees split and cracked. Roots upturned. A massive fissure opened in the earth, glowing faintly red from within. Steam hissed upward. Ryder barked orders. "Fall back. Tria formation. Secure the area." But Callan didn't move. Neither did Kor. Instead, the beast advanced toward the fissure, something calling him forward. Callan reached out, touching Kor's flank. Don't go alone. Kor looked back, and in that brief moment, it felt like he nodded. Together, they stepped toward the rift. Ryder shouted after them, but Callan ignored it. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about understanding. The forest had held its breath for years, perhaps centuries. Now it exhaled, and they were caught in the wake of something ancient and immense. Callan felt it in his bones, in his blood. This was the real reason he had found Kor, not for companionship, not even for redemption, but for this, to be a bridge between worlds, man and beast, old and new, memory and myth. He turned once to see Ryder staring at them from a distance, her eyes no longer cold, but filled with something closer to fear. She knew, too, this was just the beginning. The earth groaned like some ancient beast stirring from slumber. Callan pressed a hand to the trembling ground, his fingers brushing damp moss and warm stone. The fissure yawned wider beneath them, a jagged wound that glowed with a sickly crimson hue. Heat radiated upward, not like fire, but something deeper, older, alive in a way that defied explanation. Beside him, Kor stood tall, nostrils flared, eyes locked in the chasm's depths. He wasn't afraid. He was waiting. Behind them, the forest was chaos. Soldiers barked commands, pulling back toward high ground. Equipment was abandoned in haste. Ray's voice cut through the din, urgent but measured. She wasn't leaving, not yet. She knew what this meant. Callan's heart pounded, but he forced his breath to stay even. He had seen death. He had faced creatures bred for war. But this was different. The energy thrumming from the rift felt like memory and prophecy tangled into one. Not evil, not good, just inevitable. A distant cry echoed from deep within the fissure. Not mechanical, not human. Something vast and wounded. Kor's ears twitched. He took one slow step toward the edge. Callan placed a hand on his side. "What do you hear?" The beast didn't answer. He never did with words. But Callan felt it. An image pressed into his mind like a memory not his own. A cavern of roots, of living stone and pulsing light. And something beneath it all, breathing, watching. Then came the second sound. A voice, human this time. Faint, familiar. Callan. He turned sharply. It was impossible. That voice was from another life, one buried under years of regret. "Callan, it's me." He stepped back, stunned, eyes scanning the fissure's edge. Through the rising steam, a figure took shape, barefoot, cloaked in ash and shadow, but unmistakably her. Lyra, dead for 5 years, gone in the firebombing of the Century Expanse. He had buried the dog tags himself. Yet here she was, fragile, unreal, but real enough to steal his breath. "I came back," she said, voice trembling. "I waited." Kor growled low, stepping between them. His stance wasn't protective, it was wary. Callan swallowed. "You can't be here." She tilted her head. "And yet here I am." "You died, Lyra. I saw the wreckage." "You—" His words caught, swallowed by disbelief. She stepped closer, steam curling around her. "I died, yes, but not all of me, not completely." He reached out, fingertips brushing her arm. It was warm, solid. "How?" he asked. Her expression flickered. "The rift, it doesn't just open into the earth. It opens into time, into echoes. I fell through something. And I wasn't alone." His breath caught. "What do you mean?" She looked past him, toward Kor. "He's not what you think, Callan. None of them are." Callan turned to Kor, who watched her with unreadable eyes. Lyra continued, her voice shaking. "They were created to be weapons. Yes, but not ours. Not even this world's. They were sentinels. Anchors. The first defense against what lies deeper." Callan whispered, "The thing coming." She nodded, It feeds on memory, on pain. That's why the forest forgets. Why no one remembers what was buried here. Kor isn't just a beast. He's a keeper. That's why he bonded with you. You remember. A sharp wind ripped through the trees, carrying the scent of ozone and iron. The rift pulsed brighter. Suddenly, a shriek erupted from below, high-pitched and layered, like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. The trees shuddered. Callan staggered, clutching his head. Kor roared, planting himself beside Callan. Ride appeared behind them, mud-streaked and breathless. "You need to move," she shouted. "That thing, it's trying to surface." Callan turned. "She's here." Raya blinked, confused. "Who?" "Lyra." Raya stared at the spot, then back at him. "There's no one there, Verek." Callan looked again. Lyra stood still, expression frozen. "No, she's right." But the space was empty. The steam had dissipated. Only the rift remained. Raya approached cautiously. "You saw something. It's not uncommon. The entity uses echoes. It feeds on memory, projects it back." Callan shook his head. That was more than memory. Kor nudged aside, grounding him. Raya crouched near the edge. "It's waking. And your pet, it's drawing it faster." Callan narrowed his eyes. "No, Kor isn't the cause. He's a warning." A tremor rocked the ground. Chunks of rock tumbled into the rift. From below, light began to surge, first red, then shifting into a blinding white. Kor stepped forward again. This time, Callan didn't stop him. "What are you doing?" Raya demanded. Callan's voice was steady, letting him do what he was made to. Kor growled deeply, a sound filled with weight and age, then leapt into the fissure. Raya shouted, lunging forward, but Callan held her back. "You'll die," she hissed. "He won't," Callan said. "He knows." The light flared, engulfing the forest, turning everything to shadow and fire. Then silence. The light faded. The fissure was gone. In its place, smooth stone, cold, lifeless. Callan knelt, his breath ragged. The air smelled clean again. No more ash. No more metal. Just earth. Raya staggered back, staring in disbelief. What happened? Callan didn't speak. He didn't have the words. The forest began to stir again. Birds called in the distance. Leaves rustled. Life resumed. But something had changed. Kor was gone. Callan rose slowly, his body aching in ways he hadn't felt in years. He walked to where the fissure had been and placed a hand on the stone. "Thank you," he whispered. Raya approached, quieter this time. "It chose him." "No," Callan said. "He chose it." She nodded slowly. "What now?" Callan looked toward the horizon. The sun was rising, bleeding through the trees. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I think the story isn't over." Raya exhaled. "You could come back with us. Debrief. Help explain what we saw." Callan shook his head. "You just try to lock it away again. Pretend it never happened. And what will you do?" He looked toward the eastern ridge. "Walk. Remember. Tell the story." Raya didn't argue. She knew better. Callan turned away, boots crunching against the soil. As he walked, he could still feel Kor's presence, like a heartbeat echoing through the trees. Not gone, just elsewhere. The world had shifted. Something old had been confronted, and a debt had been paid. Callan would keep moving, not because he was running, but because some stories require motion to stay alive. And maybe one day, when the earth trembled again, Kor would return, not as a pet, not even as a predator, but as a guardian. And Callan would be ready.